ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to Castillo de San Marcos National Monument. My name is Chris. I am one of the park rangers. I'm just dressed funny today. This is how you would have seen a Spanish soldier back in the 1700s. Mid-1700s, the Spanish colonial garrison of St. Augustine. This was their general attire. I'm dressed as a sergeant of the Spanish army, which is ID'd by these two yellow stripes on the cuff of the coat. And we normally shoot cannons. We had a little bit of a problem with the weather earlier, so we canceled the firing. Then the weather got clear, so I'm up here with this gun now. And it looks like we will be doing an 1130 cannon firing for you. So if you want to stick around after this presentation, we will be firing off that gun later on. But as we work our way to that, what I want to demonstrate for you right now is the standard musket firearm soldiers were carrying when they were in combat. You would see soldiers walking around with these weapons outside on the perimeter around the fort when they went on patrols, all that sort of stuff. Cannons are used to keep the enemy back, but eventually, sometimes the enemy does find a way to get closer, and that's often where these weapons come in. Now, this particular gun that I'm about to demonstrate for you, the simple name for the weapon is a flintlock musket. Why is it called a flintlock? Literally, there's a flint stone in the lock of the gun. Back then, instead of there's no bolts, there's no firing pins or anything like that, you relied on this piece of rock striking a piece of steel, giving you a spark that fell into a pan. All this happens on the outside of the weapon. The reason why I didn't demonstrate this for you during our 10:30 time slot a little bit ago is there was still enough rainfall that the powder that sits out here would get wet. This piece of steel and the flint would get wet enough that I wouldn't get any sparks. This is a weapon of war that saw use from the 1600s through the 1700s and in the early 1800s. So decades of use in combat, but it does not like to work when it gets wet. Most things don't work when they get wet, but this is a type of technology that it's amazing how long it was in use. But if it's too windy, if it's a little damp outside, this gun is just not going to function. That's why, in addition to this being a firearm, I don't have it on me now, but you attach a long bayonet to it, making the weapon about this tall with a nice sharp pointy end. And ladies and gentlemen, this weapon is mistakenly called a rifle a lot of times. Can anyone tell me what makes a rifle a rifle?
Spiral on the inside.
Yeah, on the inside of the gun there's a bunch of spiraled grooves. And those little grooves make the bullets in modern guns today and some historic weapons fire with the accuracy that they do. This weapon does not have that feature. The inside of our barrel is just a smooth metal pipe. You pour powder in, you drop a ball in, you push it all down with your ramrod, and then you pull the trigger and hope the weapon functions. Literally, they would hope the guns go off because most of the time they don't. Will this weapon function for my presentation today? Well, I definitely hope it will. Now, ladies and gentlemen, a well-trained soldier in the mid-1700s was expected to load and fire this gun about 3 shots a minute. 1 shot every 15 to 20 seconds. And when you watch me go through the loading procedure in just a moment, you'll see how 15 to 20 seconds was considered fast back then. And this is the weapon that fought the American Revolutionary War. And ladies and gentlemen, with a weapon that's easy to load, smooth metal pipe, no grooves down the barrel, the best way to make this weapon do its job in combat, you had everyone line up shoulder to shoulder on the battlefield, point in the same direction and pull the trigger at the same time. That would guarantee that at least some of those shots would hit something straight ahead. And then you have to do about 15 to 20 seconds to get the gun reloaded to be shot again, and you wait for everyone in line to be reloaded, otherwise one person shooting is not going to do much damage. You might be pointing at a target 50 yards away straight ahead, but that ball is going to go somewhere off to the left, somewhere off to the right, either too high or too low. These soldiers were just trained to point the weapon and pull the trigger. Something might happen as a result. And ladies and gentlemen, rather than having 15 to 20 seconds of silence in combat, they would often fight with 2 lines. Have any of you seen movies where people are lining up and shooting these guns? There's often 2 lines. Front line fires a shot, the line behind them takes their place and fires a shot. They're alternating back and forth. Both sides are doing that sort of thing. And getting the soldiers ready for 15 seconds of firing right with this weapon is quite a tedious process. And what I'm going to do as far as firing the shot for you is I will load the weapon as I describe what these soldiers had to go through. And actually, Mike, I'm going to fire 2 shots. The second shot will be a combat load. The first shot I'll be walking through the drill process for you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just one weapon. It's only a little bit of gunpowder. It's not that loud, but it's kind of startling when the weapon goes off. I will say cover your ears before I pull the trigger for you all to have a chance to do that. And of course, I'll be shooting off in that direction over there. But before I go into the firing sequence, this weapon, like modern guns today, there's a safety. Can someone tell me what the safety does on a modern gun?
Stop you from shooting?
Yeah, it stops the weapon from shooting, but specifically it stops your trigger down here from working. Now for this weapon to work, the flint has to strike into that piece of steel. But the safety in this gun is called the half-cocked position. If you notice, when I pulled this one back and stopped halfway, I could rest the entire weight of the weapon on the trigger and that shouldn't move. If that moves, historically they said your gun has gone off half-cocked. That's something they didn't want. You have to pull this all the way back so you can squeeze the trigger and it goes all the way down. So as the soldiers train and get ready to shoot this thing, first thing they do is put the weapon in the safety, then with their hands or even a rag, they would wipe off the flint, wipe off that steel, and then blow across the pan to clean out any debris left behind from a shot. If you don't wipe the splint off after every shot, the weapon's not going to work the second time. So will this weapon work after my first shot? We'll see about that shortly. And then they have this little leather sleeve that was designed to stop the flint from creating a spark if needed. After they do that, they reach into their cartridge box and pull out their musket round, which is nothing more than a paper tube that historically had the gunpowder and the ball on the inside. After they have it out, they rip it open with their teeth and pour a little bit of powder in the pan, shut their pan, bring the gun down to the side, and pour the remaining contents of that powder into the barrel, and if they had a ball, they just drop it in like so. Now here's where the process gets interesting. The Spanish training drill for learning how to shoot this gun had 10 steps on how to flip your ramrod over. Step 1 was to pull the ramrod out of the gun. Step 2 was to drop the proper end down. Step 3 was to shorten your grip. Step 4 was to put it in the barrel. Step 5 was to push the ball down. And then everything again in reverse, just so you learn how to do something as simple as flipping over the stick and using the right end. When you're training a bunch of soldiers who don't know how to read or write how to use a gun, that tedious training process was necessary just to get people to learn how to use this. At this point, they all shouldered their weapon and they marched and they did as their commander told them to do before they went through firing, which meant disengage the safety, point in the right direction, and pull the trigger. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a good time to cover your ears if you wish to do so. Let's see if the weapon will go off for us today. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that was how they trained on it. Right now my hands are clean. How dirty did this get off your one shot? Well, you can see right there.
Oh, wow, man.
Every single shot has to be wiped off or this weapon will not function a second time. And even with everything I'm doing right now, it may not function this second time, but without describing every step of the way, I will show you now the loading process they did in combat. Here we go. They waited for their commander to scream the word load, and they went forward. Cover your ears. Folks, I fired 2 shots for you today. That's how filthy these weapons are. I still have to wipe it off one more time if I want to shoot it again. But for those of you interested, again, at 11:30, myself and the other reenactors are going to come up here. We're going to fire off that cannon for you, and a presentation will precede that firing as well. Thank you all for attending this program.